Don't sing to me. Don't ever sing to me.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
I will not stand for a man singing to me.
It won't happen again.
There's something very disturbing about it.
Radio Friends with episode 390, talking about a Norwegian band. Haven't done one of those in a while. Red Harvest, a name that you're probably familiar with. And if you're not,
get with the program, homie.
It's a really famous Dashiell Hammett novel from the 30s that inspired two of the greatest movies of all time, that being Yojimbo and A Fistful of Dollars. But that's besides the point. Red Harvest, the band, I knew of them for a really long time, going back to when I was getting into black metal in high school, even though I didn't really listen to them seriously until like 4 years ago. And the reason for that is, despite not necessarily being a black metal band themselves, they have very deep ties to the overall Norwegian black metal scene. We're talking guest session work for bands like Zyklon, Enslaved. One of the main guys, Lars Sørensen, was in the industrial black metal side project Messerschmitt with Blasphemer and Hellhammer from Mayhem. And Lars himself contributed heavily to Darkthrone via doing the electronic intros and outro for the Hate Them and Sardonic Wrath albums. This Lars character was very well acquainted with everybody's favorite black metal uncle Fenris.
Som klarte seg veldig fint på 70-tallet uten den dritten.
To the point where Darkthrone's 2016 album, Arctic Thunder, was actually named after the pre-Red Harvest thrash metal band Arctic Thunder. Incidentally, Arctic Thunder is also the best Darkthrone of recent vintage. Probably their best since Hate Them, and I will not hear arguments on that.
Shit. Nut up. Or get fucked up. That's what's up today.
Point is, around 4 or 5 years ago, I had all that in mind, and I was like, man, I should probably actually listen to Red Harvest. So I did. I listened to one album of theirs in particular, and it blew my fucking mind. And it continues to do so to this day. So this episode's pretty much going to be all about that. So these Red Harvest guys, they used to be in a thrash metal band called Arctic Thunder. Then when they started up Red Harvest, they kind of moved in that same thrash metal direction, but with a much weirder slant to it. Very much early 90s technical progressive thrash metal type stuff. You know, big loud bass guitar, frenetic riffing. Vocals are weird, as is the case for a lot of tech prog thrash bands at the time. Specifically thinking of that third Death Row album here. But they've still got enough latent thrashing in them to maintain some heaviness. Like right here, the heavy percussive riffs, I'm getting Overkill vibes, Exodus, coexisting with the technicality and the weirdness that you would expect from someone bestowed with the technical progressive thrash metal moniker. That's pretty much what's going on their debut album, No Mind's Land, at least on the more normal thrash metal-y songs. They've also got even weirder stuff that tends more towards the Voivod end of the spectrum on this same album. You got this song on here, Machine's Way. It's got these really choked off sounding dissonant chord stabs that give way to more of a floaty sort of dissonance when we get into the verses. Utilization of a lot of odd diminished chords and a vocal performance that gets very voivody during the chorus, in that it sort of abandons traditional thrash metal shouting in favor of a weird approximation of more normal singing. Might be grating to some, but I kind of like it. Definitely works for how bizarre the material is overall. But that's not really what Red Harvest is famous for, that odd thrash metal album. No, they're famous for their later stuff, where they went in a much more industrial direction. They're known as an industrial metal band. And by the time you get to their third album, you can very much hear that. The more aggressive sounding songs in this album often had a lot of post-punk to them that then gives way to some very grinding, thick sort of riffs with weird processed vocals, perhaps rather comparable to bands like Meathook Seed or the more experimental elements of mid-90s Napalm Death. But then you get the more atmospheric, slower-paced songs. These are still industrial, but a different sort of industrial. We're talking full-on mid-90s Godflesh, proto-Yesu style droning. Rather shoegazy, maybe even a bit of post-metal before people started using the term post-metal, that kind of stuff is all over songs like the one you're hearing right now on Sacred Ground. So you've got these two different undercurrents of industrial metal aesthetics, the aggressive, percussive, semi-grindy, but also kind of post-punk shit, and then the weird, ambient, droning, shoegazy kind of stuff from a band that was originally playing technical thrash metal. So logically, you would think that on their second album, the one that we will be primarily talking about today, There's Beauty in the Purity of Sadness, you would get something of a bridge between the two different styles. Maybe something akin to later Coroner, something like that. And when you put on this album, There's Beauty in the Purity of Sadness, the first song in there would seem to bear that assumption out. Because this album starts out sounding very post-thrashy, simplistic, groove-oriented, mechanized riffing with tribal drum beats. Then the vocals kick in and it's like, damn dude, this guy sounds like Scott Kelly from Neurosis or something. And indeed, there's a lot of aesthetic commonality with mid-90s Neurosis on this particular album. Then the more melodic elements come in, showing off that very technocratic, almost Terminator industrial metal style. Drumming is very important for lending a very texture to what would otherwise be somewhat monotonous music. Not in a bad way, I'm actually really vibing with it. Then we get to a calmer portion of the music with more negative space to it, and vocal approach number 2 comes in. Kinda Killing Joke, Typo Negative style crooning, rather gothic in its overall effect. Then of course the heavy abrasive shit comes back in with a very admirable sort of hardcore scream and an increased usage of weird industrial samples before the two approaches are married, that more abrasive edge with the crooning melodic vocals. It's quality early 90s industrial metal, and it very much seems like a logical bridge between the tech thrash of their early years and the more weirdo industrial ambient territory they would become famous for later on. However, you people are not ready for what happens on track 2 on this album. I myself was not ready for what happens on track 2 of this album. This track is what really blew my mind about this album overall, and it's what made me go out of my way to fucking track down this super out of print album a few years ago, and it's a big part of why it's one of my favorite non-standard Norwegian weirdo metal albums of all time. Check this shit out. Excuse me, bro, what in the fuck? Is that that's fucking black metal. Okay, here we go. This is a little bit more normal Red Harvest. This is what you would expect. Clean guitar, kind of post-punk, weird ambient chugging. But even this more normal Red Harvest part has a black metal tinge to it. Speaking of which, here comes the black metal again. With some really cool Neurosis-styled vocals over the top of it. I guess you could call this post-black metal, but this is way before post-black metal even existed. And it's also way better than everything that has since been called post-black metal.
Just kidding, but not really.
I kind of get the vibe that if you were to ask these guys what genre they were playing at the time, they might not say black metal, but it sounds like black metal to me. Particularly once we get to this more expansive riff section right here. Maybe they weren't influenced by Norwegian black metal at the time. I have a hard time believing that, given what I'm hearing right now, but maybe there's just something endemic to the Norwegian soul that compels musicians to write music that sounds like this. Whatever the fuck happened here, I'm glad for it, because this stuff fucking kicks ass. I'm getting like early Enslaved vibes in terms of how they layer the different instrumental parts. Maybe even some Forgotten Woods in terms of how they incorporate clean guitar. And really, it's not like there's a big beautiful wall between black metal and industrial. Towards the end of the 90s, there was all kinds of bands in Norway playing industrial black metal. Stuff like the first Manes album. Or Mysticum. Or Helheim. Or hell, one of the most important black metal projects of all time, fucking Thorns. I mean, come on, dude. It's fucking Thorns, you know? Like,
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
dude drove the car with the whole Varg Euronymous stabby. Uh-oh, he fell on a lamp. The Thorns guy was there for all of that, and he pretty much invented sort of the modern Norwegian black metal guitar style in many ways. But here's the thing, apart from Thorns, all of those bands came way after Red Harvest, and all of those bands, including Thorns for obvious reasons, utilized the Thorns guitar style. Red Harvest didn't do that. They kind of had their own weird way of playing something that was industrial and was black metal, even if they didn't call it that. I don't know, could have been a coincidence, could have been some kind of convergent evolution resulting from taking the more expansive chord voicings of a band like Voivod and the soulless mechanical feeling of industrial music and applying that to kind of prog thrash, accidentally bootstrap second wave black metal into existence. But again, whatever happened, I'm glad for it, because this album, There's Beauty in the Purity of Sadness, holy shit is it good. You got riffs like this one in Mind Blast where it starts out, okay, this is pretty normal sort of industrial post-thrash type stuff. But then when they add the distortion to it, it turns into something not that far off from a very groove-oriented black metal band such as Tullus. Really primitive, shamanic, trance-like stuff. Speaking of which, when the song then gets into the more expansive riffing, you have these god-fleshy, Yesu-ish melodic drone notes over the top of that rumbling bass guitar that still manages to sound very black metal to my ears in terms of its effect on me. Maybe it's the more ambient feel, maybe it's the very waltzy sort of pulse the music has, but especially once it speeds up. Alright, this just sounds like black metal to me. It sounds like really good black metal to me. It sounds like very original black metal to me. I can't think of too many black metal bands that were mining this sort of vein of black metal in 1994. In fact, I would not be surprised if a lot of later black metal bands took influence from this particular album. Here come the Killing Joke vocals. And they're weird like they were on the thrash metal album, but they're not goofy like they were on the thrash metal album. I actually really love the clean vocals on this album. And then this fucking like bass guitar led shit here with the ambient guitars in the background, giving me some Enslaved vibes in a good way. Wouldn't be surprised if Enslaved were influenced by them. Then the heavy shit, that's gotta come back in with the cool harsh vocals over the top of it and that just groovy pulse. Maybe kind of tribal crust punk, but also has a lot of similarities to bands like Tullus and Cold later on. Don't know if any of those guys were into Red Harvest, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were. And yeah, there's other tracks besides the opener on this album that aren't as directly black metal adjacent as the stuff I've played so far, but even those have that sort of black metal icy atmosphere to them. This one towards the end of the album, Mother of All, features a very cyclical, sort of repeated, droning, melodic, industrial metal riff on top of this throbbing bass guitar-led pulse with the shamanic vocals in the background. Then they start getting very experimental with the texture, changing that pulse into a mechanistic chug that then opens up into more of a bar chord thing, hitting those higher notes before they finally hit the apex of the song's heaviness with some real heavy but also atmospheric groove thrash riffs. Then when they get back into that droning part from earlier, now you got these weird ghost notes. Almost sounds like later Inquisition or something, this guitar part. Those bendy bits. I swear to God, so much of this album feels like it's out of time.
I'm not even supposed to be here. I hope I don't jack off.
Like there's so many parts that sound like things that other bands would get famous for doing way later on. And I don't even know if Red Harvest influenced those guys at all, or if they just happened to stumble into this weird progressive shit that nobody else would pick up on for years. Like there's parts of this album almost sound like Brave Murder Day era Catatonia. And yet very different from that. Like the guitar parts totally could have fit in with Catatonia. The drum parts are doing that weird neurosis shit, but due to the very droning ambient nature of the music, it actually doesn't seem incongruous at all. Then it goes into some more subdued ambient black metalish kind of stuff. Guitar parts almost sound like something you might hear in a band like Streed, but again, the drums are doing that crazy, tribal, primitive, yet robotic Terminator sound and shit, and when the distortion comes back in, man does that shit get crazy. Like, what's going on with the vocals here, dude? Homeboy's painting with all the colors of the wind.
There is iron in your words of death.
Then the tribal drumming really picks up and you get this vaguely Middle Eastern, almost Therian-style winding guitar melody, kind of wrapping itself around those very shamanic-sounding vocals before the tribal pounding of the drums just kind of overtakes everything. Really cool fucking song. That one's just called Sadness, so I guess you could see it as something of a title track. But my personal favorite song on the album, and also one of the most black metal-oriented songs on the album, is entitled Mastodome, which is actually a medical term for getting a blowjob from Brent Hines. This one's got a real nice, clean guitar intro, as you've probably come to expect from Red Harvest at this point. They've got a real good grasp of how to do a good, clean guitar part. This is one of the longer songs in the album, mostly due to the amount of layering going on, like subtly bringing the drums in here. Start out rather soft, but with sort of a powerful pound to it in the background. Then they get more militaristic and marchy, building up to when this song brings in the real fucking heaviness. And man, is it heavy. Got these droning, blocky fucking riffs with a keyboard wash in the background that then resolves into a very consonant sort of melodic tail. And as they bring in fuller chords to the overall panoply, it actually gets rather Bathory sounding. This whole song's about the push-pull between these two different sections of music. The real heavy Bathory shit, and then the more subdued, clean guitar, but still very tribal and heavy in its own way, kind of more ambient sections. Here comes the heavy bit again. Great fucking vocal hook there, by the way. Any problems I had with the more cleanly sung vocals on the No Minds Land Tech Thrash album absolutely cleared up on this album. Love the clean vocals here. Real fucking Bathory, but psychedelic, Godflesh, but also sort of folky Norwegian ambient black metal type shit. Droning, but not boring at all. It's a very spiritual sort of album, and it's really affected me ever since I first gave it a chance. Pretty much all of the Red Harvest stuff that I've heard has been pretty damn good, but there's something about just this particular album is especially mind-blowing to me. It's hard to describe, which might be why it's not name-checked very often by literally anybody, but if you want to hear a really cool, interesting, unique, sort of underrated classic from the early 90s Norwegian underground, you gotta track down a copy of the second Red Harvest album, and hopefully I've made a good enough of a sales pitch for it that you end up doing so. But hey, even if you hated that stuff, thanks for listening or watching or whatever you did, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Would you come to bed and shut that fucking thing off?
Shut the fuck up. It's the 39 Steps. It's fucking Hitchcock, for Christ's sake.
Hitchcock? Like Psycho?
This is from his British period, you fucking dimwitted twat.